Welcome to our pod, and by that I mean on Wednesdays we read. I'm Hannah.
I'm Laura.
And we are two best friends who do a deep dive into a new book series one book at a time. But sometimes we revisit one of those series and we go back and then we cover
Back to the Future.
And we go into the Murderbot diaries and we tell you all about Martha Wells' System Collapse. Which just dropped like last week. And if you guys weren't here and paying attention, Martha was here, guys.
We talked to Queen herself, Martha Wells.
And it was amazing. And I don't know how to come back from it. Like, I don't know how I'm a person after this. I'm forever changed.
Not sure how we are still existing the way that we are. I want to be exactly like Martha when I grow up. She is so amazing. And so amazing. She liked when I got my comments online. And I was like... She knows who I am. And then I was like, Laura, you just talked to her.
Like, she was so wonderful. She was so thoughtful. She gave us the best compliment of like, oh, it's so nice that you guys were able to read the book before this because like you guys had asked such nice questions. And I was like, I'm dying. Like,
I'm surprised that people don't read the book before they interview her.
I think sometimes they have her on around the time when a book comes out. And like you and I did.
Oh, they haven't gotten the advanced reader copy. Okay.
Like you and I got that interview and I immediately emailed the publisher and I was like, please give us at least 1 to 2 copies. Yeah. And they do what they always do, which is send us 1. And I'm like, that's fair enough. Like we
should ask for 5 next time.
But I think sometimes people are like, oh yeah, come on and we'll talk about your new book and we'll ask you questions. And like you and I had just been very like on top of like, we're asking about this, so we're gonna get a book, and we did, which actually allowed us to record this way in advance.
Yes,
this will be very nice. But yeah, make sure you're going back and listening to that before you listen to this episode because
it was a wonderful interview.
Martha is the queen, and I just want to listen to her like talk about the history of fantasy and sci-fi, and she was amazing.
Also, I was just so moved by Martha saying that she's on a journey herself with her own writing and her own thoughts and experiences and how she's trying to unlearn and learn new things. And I just think that more people need to be open to that kind of thing. Yeah. And unfortunately they aren't. And I just really find everything that Martha is doing to be so refreshing. And she's just incredibly kind and she's doing Murderbot's work.
Doing all the Murderbot's work.
Yes, like she's wonderful. Everybody check out all her work.
But Laura, before we do a deep dive into this new book in this old book series, what are you reading, watching, and or enjoying?
So hopefully by the time that this episode comes out, because I know we had received at the time of this recording, we had received some news that the Writers Guild had gotten a deal.
Yes.
And that they were going back to work. So I'm hoping that by the time this recording comes out, we are in the clear to talk about
same girl, same.
Media. And so I'm going to take the plunge and do it.
This is our first time, and it's going to be so funny if they like already did to make a deal. And there's like 4 episodes where you guys are like, you guys talk about like reading, watching, and enjoying.
It's fine. It's fine, you guys.
We're taking a chance, guys.
We're recording these so out of order. If not, we apologize for getting into things and covering things when a deal has not been reached for the actors as well. But hopefully it has been by now in November. So I recently watched on Amazon Prime Video, Undone.
Yeah, you told me I need. Well, I've heard of it from you texting me, and then
yeah, that's right. I texted you about it. I was like, "Have you watched this?"
And then she literally said, "Don't look anything up about it." So make sure you're being careful because I have not watched it yet, and I didn't look anything up about it, Laura.
Okay, so I'm going to keep this very spoiler free, but this is a really unique animated show. It's by the creators of BoJack Horseman, Hannah. So I think it's kind of up your alley. But it's a show where they have recorded it with the actors, the live actors, and then they've gone back and painted over the scenes. So it's like a animation style then over top of that. And it's really cool to look at, actually. It almost looks like a watercolor painting, I think, but it's a neat thing. And watching this and you're having a hard time trying to decide, like, do I know that actor? And then you're Googling who's in the cast because you're like, they look familiar. And then you're like, oh yeah, that is them. It was hard to tell because of the animation. But it's a really neat animation style that I don't know that I've really seen before. So that kind of drew me in from the get-go. But we are dealing with a situation where I believe her name is Anya because now we are a week past me watching this show. Anya is a young woman who's kind of going through a lot in her life, and she feels bored with a lot of things going on in her life. She mentions, like, in the first episode that she is at the grocery store trying to decide between two kinds of beans. Like, do I get this kind of beans or this kind of beans? And they look exactly the same, just a slightly different colored label. And so she ends up going and experiencing a car accident after a fight with her sister that was a pretty brutal fight, honestly. After she experiences this fight, or after she experiences this car crash, she begins to have, like, time travel experiences. And it's left up to the viewer to decide if this time travel experience is a time travel experience or not. And it's extremely fascinating. And I love all of the is there, isn't there time travel involved in this between the other characters, between the viewer and the show. Like, it's so hard to wrap your brain around certain things that are happening. It's so emotional and it's extremely interesting because certain things are brought up in the show that I'm like, wait a minute, is that a thing? And then I'm Googling it to find out, okay, wait a minute here. Could this be something that has actually been researched? And it's really, really interesting. And this show, I think, flew under my radar for way too long. But I think it's an interesting depiction of mental health, of trauma, of relationships, and it's definitely giving me those weird, trippy sci-fi elements that I've kind of been digging at the moment.
Yeah.
Because the other thing that I've been enjoying was Annihilation, the first book in the Southern Reach trilogy by Jeff Vandermeer.
One of Hannah's all-time favorite book series.
You told me to read this years ago.
Yeah.
And I'm just finally getting to it. That's how my life works.
I mean, that's how both of us are with our reading. So I don't know what you're talking about.
You know how, like, somebody suggests a book to you, or even you see it on Instagram and you say, oh yeah, I'll get to that soon. And it's like, that's a lie. You won't read it for 5 years. Like, that's literally what happened in this situation.
Yeah. I mean, that's just any TBR person, though. Like, people who are like, oh, I have like 100 books left on my TBR. I'm like, my TBR is infinite. It doesn't exist
How do you
anymore.
know how many books are on it?
Yeah, right. Like, people will keep track. And I'm like, no. All the books are on my TBR. It's just whichever ones I decide to take off that month. Like, come on.
I don't know how people keep track because I just am like, oh yeah, I've heard of that one. It's on my TBR. I don't know why I even say it like it's a list, because it's just like not a big blob. It's the cloud. No one understands how much is in there or where it's at. That's what my TBR is. This is the cloud.
Right.
But Annihilation was a short book, which was kind of nice because every now and then you just kind of need something that's like a little chip. You know what I mean? Where it's like, okay, just enough to keep me interested. But I loved this book for the way that it not only kind of messed with you and trying to figure out, like, what we're dealing with in terms of the landscape and the nature. And I think that's something that I'm really drawn to in certain sci-fi is the nature depictions. And that was done really well and played with a lot in this because nature was manipulated by whatever they were dealing with in Area X.
Right.
And another thing that I thought was extremely interesting about Annihilation was the relationship between the doctor, well, the biologist, and her husband. And it seemed like to me that when I was reading some other people talking about this, because I had, after I read it, I needed someone to talk about this book with. So I was just going on Reddit and looking at reviews and people talking about this book, and as one will do. And I kind of felt like people weren't paying enough attention to the relationship between the biologist and her husband. They were focusing more on her relationships with like the psychologist and just her experience within Area X.
Mm-hmm.
And I was kind of surprised because I thought that their relationship, the husband and wife, was some of the most like heart-wrenching and interesting parts to me,
Yeah.
because it was really just a self-discovery, and it kind of felt like, let me look up my review here because I thought that I kind of summed up my thought here pretty well. Okay, so yeah, I thought that it was like a really good way to see a person discovering themselves, and
Mm-hmm.
then also the way that a relationship can have these ebbs and flows, and how it felt like she was honestly kind of chasing after their relationship
Yeah.
in the book and reconciling with the fact that maybe they weren't the best relationship. I don't know. I thought it was so interesting because she was really going through a journey of determining, like, are we good together, or are we just kind of people that worked together for a while or had something at a moment in time. I thought it was so interesting. And yeah, I felt like not a lot of people were talking about that. They were talking more about the tower. They were talking about the lighthouse. And I was like, but what about the husband and the
Yeah.
wife and how she went after him at the end? Like, what about that?
Well, I think it's an interesting book because like it doesn't deal with the marriage in like a happy way.
Right.
Um, it's a very complex story, and I loved this book.
And there's also like the question, I'm spoiling a lot of this because there's the question of whether or not it was the husband that came back from Area X. So that's another thing that the reader has to kind of decide for themselves. Like, was that truly her husband that came back?
Uh,
And I haven't
well,
read the next books, so I don't know at this point.
I mean, that's a complicated tale that you'll have to continue reading on. But like, I do remember that something that like really stuck out to me in these books and all of Jeff Vandermeer's books is like there is this weird layer of messiness on top of the science fiction. Like the
Mhm.
characters are so oftentimes like a little bit absurd in a way that I feel like humans are absurd. And they
Well,
make
it's incredibly
decisions.
realistic.
Yeah, like they make decisions where you're like, why are you doing that? What could you possibly get out of this? And then you're like, oh, okay, well, I guess that's why. Like you kind of understand their motivations, even if you don't always agree with the outcome. And like I feel like that's so unique in how short of a novel this is,
Yeah.
along with the like, I don't know, there's something uniquely human about the way he enters like Area X is just this like natural world that's kind of overtaking itself and it's questionable and it makes you question your identity
Hmm.
and like putting yourself off kilter in that way. Like I'm not a fan of horror, but it is like
This is
this
considered a horror novel.
yeah. And like I can see why, but I oftentimes don't think it's a horror novel just because
Hmm.
like it is unsettling, but I feel like we often just immediately say a horror novel is unsettling. Like it's when you feel that unsettled like anticipation. But that's never what I got out of this novel. I just kind of got like a very humanistic look. And then like there were weird like natural horror type elements around it, but
Yeah.
they were also like weirdly often religious almost. And I
Hmm.
like was because like the lighthouse and the tunnel, it always
Hmm.
felt like a
Yeah.
little bit more religious to me. And so like having all those elements mixed together, it just never came across as like a pure horror novel, even though a lot of people
Hmm.
consider it that. I think it's like a pure sci-fi novel.
Yeah, I got more sci-fi vibes, I guess, than
Yeah.
horror. I agree with you in that, like, if you have anything that's kind of like, oh, this feels weird, people are like horror, and it's not. I it then kind of gets into a discussion of like, how do we develop genre lines, which
Right, that's true.
so is harder for me to say because I don't read horror, but I kind of feel like, I guess I didn't pick up on some of the religious themes, but I kind of feel like the nature and how it changed throughout the book is maybe something that people find more horrific about it, because like when they
Mm.
first went to Area X, they were a little unsure of how they had got there. And the things that become more horrific are how the things that they know change.
Yeah.
And I think that that's maybe something that is more of a horror element because like the psychologist, her relationship with her changes because she's like, oh, well, you were kind of weird at first, but now I'm learning more about you and I'm really bothered because you're not giving all the information. You're not willing to come down in this really creepy place with us. And then you're taking off with a bunch of guns. Yeah, you're really bothersome. So like those kind of things, like as you kind of your perception changes, it becomes more horrific as you learn about things. And like the tower, like going down into the tower, and first of all, I thought that was really an interesting way to describe that, is how the biologists thought it was a tower even though they were going down into it. And I thought that was fascinating, and I always kind of just pictured it like the inside of a castle, like but almost like an esophagus. And because it was pulsating and everything, and you could see the blood moving in there and everything, the breathing. And I thought that was really a really creative way to describe that. But I think the more that she is in Area X, the more that the tunnel starts to change and the more that their perception of each other starts to change. So it becomes a little more horror-esque.
Yeah.
But it was a really good book, and I could probably keep talking about it, but it's really interesting. And hopefully I will read the next couple books because I've been in a bad habit of starting the first book of the series and not finishing it.
It's almost like we created an entire podcast to combat that.
I know. Maybe we should cover this series next because we've already read the first book.
I mean, that's true. I read all three. I loved all three. It only gets weirder. I love a good weird sci-fi. Let's just face it. Hannah is all about the like weird and I think I like it when like I like it when if someone has a reaction of like, I just didn't get it. It was asking me to buy in too much. I'm like, sometimes I will buy into the weirdest stuff if I'm just like, yeah, that's the universe we're in. So
also now that I'm thinking about it, the Christian elements, with the writing in the tower, obviously, because those are like almost Bible verses, but not quite. So that makes sense. But it's almost like more of a worship towards whatever is in the tower.
Yeah, and I think that's kind of the thing, is like there's almost like a weird deep religion of like nature and the like, and like I looked it up
or of what is in Area X.
Yes. And so like there's a deep worship of it in a weird way. And I think like again, it goes to genre terms, but sometimes I think we want to define religion as like belief in a god of some sort instead of worship of something, and like worship of something could still be a religion, and so that's kind of, it felt very, especially with the way the main character, I can't remember her name off the top of my head, but
I just remember the biologists. I just remember their roles.
Yeah, well they're not really named. I don't think
they're named in this.
She's called the biologist. So well, the biologist, like
they're kind of like stripped of their names so that they don't.
And she seems to be like deeply reverent of nature and like the pool in the backyard. I remember being like very visceral, that was her and like that energy. Yes. And so like that just stuff, it kind of seemed worshipful. And then when she gets to the tower, it's like even more of like, and so that's kind of the religion elements I was getting at with that. Yeah. I'm putting those pieces together now. I think maybe I was looking too much just for like Jesus. That's okay. Laura, can I tell you that I went to a mass for a wedding recently, and I got one of the best compliments you can get when you grow up in a religious household. And I feel like I feel like this will be a shared experience with you. When someone turns around at the end of a service and says, "You have a beautiful voice." Why, thank you. I love when that moment happens. It never makes me feel special. Like, that they mean like you have a good voice for like hymns. Did you like... You should have responded when they said that and said, "And with your spirit." With your spirit. I just had a moment. It's like I was like the only one singing in mass. It's like kind of the only thing I get out of mass anymore. But like they also had some bangers. They had the One Bread, One Body hymn, which is like one of my favorites. One body, one Lord of all. And I was like singing, and I was like, oh gosh, and you feel like kind of stupid when you're the only one singing. But I was like, oh, this is a mass. And a guy turned around, he's like, you have a lovely voice. I was amazed. And I was like, oh, that's nice. You. I know that it's not good enough for Broadway, but it is good enough for the back of the pew. You know what? I'm kind of under the
impression now that like if people just enjoy singing and dancing or whatever it is, do it. You don't have to
Right.
be good at it. You do not have to be good at it.
Right. And that's
I
kind of
like
the
to
thing.
sing a
Like,
lot and I'm not fabulous and I just do it because I like it. It
Laura
makes
was
me
the lead
happy.
in musicals, guys. She was
I'm not
fabulous.
that good.
You were pretty
I'm
good.
good for a small town.
That's still
Big fish
pretty
in
good.
small pond.
um, so yeah, I get it. But I was very like happy about that.
That is a nice
It's
compliment.
always so nice when it happens. I don't know why I care so much about the opinions of others. Uh
I think that's great. I think people should give compliments like that more often because
right?
too often it seems like compliments are strictly relegated to like appearance, and it's nice to get compliments about like, oh, you did a good job at this, or
Right?
you're very kind, or I really liked what you said to that person earlier. Like
Yeah,
that's a kind of thing that we don't do enough of. So
I
I like that
agree.
they complimented you on that. That's really nice, especially from like a stranger.
Right? That's very
So
nice. So,
Hannah, can I talk
um,
about another thing before I ask you
yeah.
what you've been enjoying? So I've been actually, well, this is kind of part of what I've been enjoying. I've been watching a lot of Tori talks on YouTube.
Okay.
Tori Tecken is an indie author.
Mm.
She wrote Phased, which I have
Okay.
not read yet, but I think, did you read it, Hannah?
No, but I have it on my
Okay.
Kindle.
Okay. Um, so maybe you should read that soon because I'm really curious about it after like watching her YouTube channel because I watched a interview that she did live with Krystle Matar, which was really
Okay.
good. And then I've just been watching some other videos that she's put up, and I really enjoy her channel. It's really just down to earth, and she talks about a lot of things that I'm like, oh yeah, I feel like we need to have more discussions about this. And recently she did a video about how she is no longer doing TBRs. No more
Mm.
TBRs, no more TBR videos. And I think the reasoning for this was really good because she said that a lot of her experience as a content creator has been so focused on just producing and producing and producing and producing and producing that it's taken the enjoyment out of things for her. And
Mm-hmm.
doing TBR videos, everything was planned out. And she said that really works for some people, but it stopped working for me.
Yeah.
And not in the way where it's like, oh, I'm not getting YouTube views. That's not what it's about. It's in the way where it's like, I'm not excited about the things that I'm reading because they're too planned out.
Yep.
And she also mentioned, like I just mentioned a minute ago, like she would read the first book in a series and then not get to the rest of them because she's just
Mm-hmm.
trying to pump out as much as she can to create content. And I think that it was a really I would recommend people go watch the video because you can get all of her reasons there. And I'm not doing a good job describing this, but it was a really good kind of examination of like, do we take our hobbies too far where
Yeah.
they're not fun anymore? And I think that we all kind of need to reflect on that a little bit. I know you and I, Hannah, have been trying really hard this summer and into the fall to like push hard and get like things recorded and get things read because we had a lot of interviews and stuff that all came at the same time. And we both said at different times, like, yeah, we're enjoying the books, but it's just been a lot and everything. And we keep mentioning it. But I think that it's just important to remember like it's a hobby. We want to be doing things that are fun. We want to, even though it's like fun to read books that come out early and stuff like that, it still gets to be a lot when you have other things going on in your life and you know that you have deadlines to read things because
Yeah.
once you add in like the deadline factor of I need this video or this review to come out, it starts to become less fun and more like a chore, even if the book is excellent. So,
Yes.
and then when you actually get a chance to, read something like I was talking about Annihilation earlier, I think the part of the reason that I enjoyed it so much was because it was just a random mood read where I was just like, you know
Mm-hmm.
what I'm going to read tonight? Annihilation,
Yeah.
because Hannah read it a while ago and told me to read it. So just being able to mood read something, I think is really helpful. And
Right.
I just kind of every now and then I like to reflect on that. And again, we've been talking about it a lot, how we need to take your hobbies a little less seriously. But I think it's kind of nice to hear other content creators say the same thing
Yeah.
where they're like, "Oh yeah, I'm also starting to get burnout and I'm not going to be doing TBRs anymore because it's just a little too much."
Yeah.
So I thought that was refreshing, and I do think people should go check out Tori's content because there's a lot of good stuff there, and I really enjoy the conversations that she has with people on there. So go check that out, and I recommend that no longer doing TBR's video.
Yeah, I think that that's really good and very healthy. I think I've been a little bit less like it's hard because I think it's a weird millennial thing, and I don't think it's all our fault. I think we were raised in a generation of like you must do,
You have to
and
do
like
something.
you have to do something. Like even I was an English major, and like obviously it's a very expensive degree and stuff like that. But I remember my parents being like, "Well, you need a game plan. You can't just like go out." And like later in life, I was like, "Why did I need a game plan? Why couldn't I have just like struggled and tried to find an internship? Like why couldn't I have just like become a bartender in Chicago for a while and like just lived, you know?"
Mm-hmm.
And well, that wouldn't have helped my drinking problem. Like it might have made me happier in the long run. Like I might have not gotten the drinking problem because I didn't go
Yeah.
to law school, you know. And I think that there is like a little, like I obviously don't regret my life choices that led me to who I am today, and I do love
Mm-hmm.
that person. But like there is that part of me who is like, why aren't we okay with letting people like tread
Take a breath.
water? Yeah. And so I feel like sometimes millennials were taught very much like, you have to do, you have to do, you have to do.
Mm-hmm.
And then like we had to turn all of our hobbies into parts of our personality. Like people being
Yeah.
like, oh my gosh, you millennials, you only care about like Hogwarts houses. You only care about this. You only care about this. And it was like, yeah, we were kind of taught that like you had to make something important or else it wasn't important.
Or
Like
else it's not a thing. It
it's
doesn't
not a
matter.
thing. And so like, yeah, that is and that was also like we lived through a recession. Like, and we weren't part of the people who had the employment like effects that the
Sure.
recession had. But we did have like our families were affected by it. So they were like, well, we're not going to buy you a book if it's not an important book. We're not going to do this for you if it's not
Mm-hmm.
important. You have to have a job. You have to be secure. And so I think sometimes like we put this internalized pressure on ourselves where it's like, well, we're readers and then we became content creators. So this is a job. And like it does kind of suck the fun out of things. And then
Yeah.
like if you stop posting content for a second, you lose like a ton of stuff based on like all these fake algorithms that
I
like
know it's ridiculous because
like
and
science nerds made up on like an
mhm.
on a website. Like it's all code.
It all sucks too because it's like
Yeah.
if you're not like constantly engaging with people online through posts or whatever, you miss a couple posts and then all of a sudden you're not getting all the follows anymore. Like I
Mm-hmm.
know from my own Bookstagram, like I was very regular for almost a year
Yeah.
and I built up a fairly good following, and then I started to not feel as well. I started to have some mental health issues, so I was just not posting as much. And I think I get maybe 2 posts a month,
Yeah.
if that. And when I do post, I usually get some likes, and like the people that usually interact with me, they will like it, but I hardly get any followers anymore,
Mm-hmm.
that kind of thing. And it's just it's one of those, you find out who your friends truly
Yeah.
are. The people that actually want to interact with me, it's like 100 people. So
Yeah. And like
and I'm fine with that, but I just think that it does kind of suck when it's like you're trying to do things to protect your mental health and your physical health by, taking a step back, and then you see the effects on, you know, your content creation, like, oh
mm-hmm.
crap, well, I guess I am not getting followers anymore because I'm not posting enough, and
Right.
I'm not able to read enough to make enough posts. So whoops. So it all is complicated and messy, and I think that you're definitely right where we've all kind of been trained to be like, we must produce more content.
Mm-hmm.
It must mean something, and it doesn't need to mean anything. And I also
And it
think it's
likely
maybe not
doesn't.
fair
Like,
to some of the people that create the media and the books that we're trying to pump out reviews of all the time, or
mm-hmm.
not necessarily reviews of all the time, but posts about and videos about or whatever, that it might mean more if we're coming to them organically
Mm-hmm.
versus a set schedule.
Right.
I don't know. These are all questions that I could continue to ask, and I'll still set a schedule for.
Right. I know.
What we're
Yeah.
going to read next year on this
Yeah, I know. On
podcast.
our giant list of when we need to make content and why and how we need to plan ahead because Hannah can't do stuff around her wedding.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I will say though, like some of that though is helpful to get ahead on things,
right.
and it does help in the long run. But at the same time, it is something that I think all of us kind of need to be more aware of, that,
Mhm.
you know, the hobbies should be fun.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
I think that's why I liked that video of Tori so much, because it was kind of a reminder to me to
Right.
keep
Take
it
a
fun.
beat.
Hannah, what have you been reading and watching?
So for watching, I started watching Ugly Betty, because TikTok
I have
rules
never
my
watched.
life. Yeah, I'd never seen it. And so I just saw a couple of things and I was like, yeah, I'll watch Ugly Betty. I like
TikTok
America
likes Ugly
Ferrera.
Betty.
Yeah, it like was having a
Interesting.
moment. Well, so there's just like there's a certain thing that happens on TikTok. You don't have a TikTok, so I feel like I'm
No.
explaining it. But like there will be random times where like for a week one movie is just like huge. And so someone like like put a TikTok where they're like, "Does anyone else get the random movies in different parts? And if so, are we all enjoying like The Help this week?" Where like it's just
Okay.
like randomly the algorithm will spit out like because there are certain TikTokers who will just post parts of movies and that's all they
Okay.
do. And like you'll just start watching it and you just like get sucked in. Like there was like a random like TV show that I watched a clip of and I was like, what is this? And then I looked it up and it was like a remake of a like old Hollywood movie from the 1930s that was like a
Random.
Kate Winslet BBC miniseries. And I was like, I guess
How
this
do
is
people
big on
find
TikTok.
this stuff?
I don't know, but they do. And then they just make content about it.
It's amazing.
Yeah. And so they were like pushing Ugly Betty for like a week. And I was like, I'm kind of interested. Can I tell you that like I will continue to watch this? But man, was it a rough hang in the early or in the
Oh
mid
no.
2000s? Like just the way they try to convince you that America Ferrera is fat in this show because she's a size 6 is horrifying. Like in the first episode, the
A
entire
size 6.
I'm pretty sure she's a size 6. Like she might be a size 8, but like she ain't she's not like a woman's mid-size. She is a small person who is not a size 0. And like people have talked about this, how like the early 2000s, like 2000 to 2010 was a rough time to be any type of woman who was not skin thin, like
Mm-hmm.
rail thin.
Mm-hmm.
It was low rise, skinny cut jeans. Like guys, I was a size 8 and like in high school and I remember thinking I was so fat because I was not a normal size baddie, quote unquote, that I saw on
Mm-hmm.
TV. And like literally to the point where one of my friends let me borrow a pair of their jeans and I was like, there's no way I'll fit into those. And we were the same size. It was just she
Mm-hmm.
had no waist and I had a waist. So like it was a hard time for everyone. We can accept
Sure.
that. But like the entire premise of this show is like a woman who wants to run her own magazine at some point in time, wants to become like part of this magazine industry. She's like trying to get a job with this like conglomerate that pretty much has like they're in universe Vogue,
Because
called
that was the job, journalism,
yeah,
magazines. That was the job at the time for
um
women. Mm-hmm.
and so that was like what she wants to do. And so she gets hired on like just out of college to work for like Mead Publications as a personal assistant to like the Nepo baby boss's son who's going to be running the Vogue company
Okay.
after the original editor who looks exactly like Anna Wintour dies in a
Okay.
fiery crash. And so she gets hired because she's so ugly he'd never want to sleep with her.
Oh my gosh.
And this show is awful. Like I get
Doesn't she
it.
just have like glasses and bangs? Is that what makes her ugly?
Glasses, bangs, braces, and she wears colorful clothing because she is
Okay,
from
so
Queens. So
I'll just
she's
say that I had all of those things.
yeah.
Glasses, bangs, braces, and colorful clothing. That
Like
sounds like me in high school. Like
it's
to a
just like
T.
it's kind of like she's the nanny, but she's shorter with glasses and braces. And so like,
Okay.
but like the whole thing with Fran Drescher was hot and she knew it in
Yeah,
that
Fran
show.
was hot.
And
And
so like
everybody knew she was hot. They
in
were all
the
checking her
first
out.
in the first episode, like the boss is trying to make her quit because she's so ugly that she shouldn't work at a fashion magazine. And there are some things that like I feel like the show one doesn't give her enough credit and then two like Sometimes you're like, Betty, are you bad at your job?
Oh,
It's like in the first episode, he's trying to get her to quit, and he has her like quote unquote dress up in this like leather get up to like stand next to models and like stand in for one of the stars, and like everyone starts laughing at her, and I'm like, dude, America Ferrera is hot in this scene. Like she is like, it's so unbelievable that like you put braces and glasses on her and she's disgusting to look at, because I'm like, her body is amazing. It is gorgeous. She looks hot. Like, yeah, her
I
face
feel like she
like
still even is very pretty when she has braces. And
so
why are
like
braces the thing that makes someone hideous?
so everyone like makes fun of her. She gets bullied horribly, which I'm sure happens in fashion magazines, but there's not enough disgust of like, hey, this is a fashion magazine that's like literally a toxic work environment.
Also,
And like,
do the people who work at fashion magazines, not the models, the people who like are the editors and everything, they're all extremely attractive? Is that a
yeah,
thing?
like it can be a thing where people like hire on like, like, oh, I should be fashionable to work at a fashion magazine.
Oh,
Like you should care about the clothes, and stuff, because you're like
hmm.
drafting stuff. So like
Okay.
there is some truth to that. But also like at one point her boss is like, hey, we're going to a really nice restaurant. Like, could you like dress up a little? And she comes in wearing like what like a queen's going out outfit would be. And then that's where I'm like, Betty, do you not read the magazine you work for? Like, you should know how to dress yourself for like an upscale. And then like the restaurant literally won't let her in
If
because
that's her
she's so
job.
disgusting. And then she's like, the restaurant's like, we can't let you in. You look horrifying. And I'm like, what restaurant's doing that? When she's like, that's my boss. I'm the assistant. Can I go drop off this file?
What is
Like,
this, some weird country club?
yeah, it was very, some of the show is just like so bizarre. And I'm sitting there like, you have to know, like, do you read the magazine? Because like, you should know, just like put on a quick black top.
Right.
Like, that's the thing, is like fashion magazines, like, wear a little black dress. And like, I understand. I actually used to really love fashion magazines. I had a weird obsession with them in high
Oh,
school.
okay.
Random fact about Hannah that no one knows, but like
Oh,
I
I didn't know
liked
that
all
even.
the like designer like magazines and stuff, and I found it
Hmm.
interesting to read about them. And like it was well known that my mom and I enjoyed shopping together, and like obviously we shopped for my body because again, I was not a twiglet. But like that's the thing, is like you do know what is in fashion this month. It's just like if it were
Mhm.
more about like, oh, socioeconomically, no thank you, or like I'm not really interested in that. I want to make my own like way in this world, and I think my brain should be enough. But it like makes her out to be just deliberately obtuse about, and like
Mm.
she doesn't know how to dress herself or do her own makeup or do anything. And then like, but you don't have any reason for it.
I was gonna say, if maybe there was more of a reason behind it where it's just like, this is my personality and I enjoy dressing this way and I don't like to wear makeup because of X and Y, Z. It
Right.
would maybe make a little more sense. But
And she has
is there
moments,
going to be a big, like, we
right.
give her a makeover
And then
episode
right. I don't know. And so
where
like
she's
there's
suddenly
certain things that
hot
are,
and with the guy?
and I just don't feel, and they have her like set up to probably fall in love with her boss. And
Hmm.
for a man who sure as hell has a lot of like things to say about her, he wasn't looking great in the early 2000s. Okay. He looks like a
I'm
little
looking
string
him up.
bean. His name is Eric Mabius. And like in the show, I'm like, you're not that hot. And it may just be like he's not my style of hot, but like when you look at him with like his spiky hair when he's younger and
Hmm.
like spray tanned, I'm like, don't throw glasses in stone houses there, sir.
This is interesting.
Like he kind of
He's in
ages.
that Hallmark show that
Yeah.
mom likes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Like he
Hmm.
kind of ages, and he becomes a little bit more handsome in his older days. But like when he's young, you're not that hot. And then they
Interesting
pair,
casting.
and then like in the first couple episodes, they're gonna pair her with this guy who's like, oh, he's so nerdy. He has glasses, and I'm like, that man is disgustingly hot. Like we can't just keep putting glasses on hot people and telling me
Is
they're
his name Justin?
let me hold on. No. That's the kid from, that's her nephew on it. But um let's see. His name is Christopher Gorham. Look up Christopher Gorham and tell me
Okay.
that man is not disgustingly hot. Like,
Disgustingly hot, Hannah. I don't. Is this Reggaeton page actually?
no,
You said
okay, so
disgustingly
maybe
hot.
not that, but like he is a very good looking man. And to tell me that, like, oh yes,
Oh yeah, he is
he has
attractive
glasses on him, and they were like, well, of course he's into Betty. And I'm like, yeah, of course he's into Betty because it's America
because of the
Ferrera. But you
glasses,
keep
or
yeah, but like you and he's like nerdy and like knows facts about butterflies. So I'm like, I'm sorry. That man is just like awash with women in New York. You can't just keep putting glasses on hot people and telling me they're not hot. You're giving like children in the early 2000s like complexes. Like it's just not a thing.
I. Why did they not think he's hot?
I don't know. And that he showed
There's
up and
a
I was like,
shirtless picture of him. Wow.
he's so attractive. And that also like
Why do
bothers me.
shows lie about this kind of stuff? Like, why do they think they can get away with these kind of things? Like,
And here's
even
the
the
thing
Barbie movie like addressed it, where they're like, "Look, we know we're not making the right point here because Margot Robbie is disgustingly beautiful."
right. Like it's hard to make this point with Margot Robbie. Look at her. And like
Yeah.
that's the thing is like they do try extra hard to like make America Ferrera frumpy. Like even in the title
Okay.
sequence, you can tell that the lens they're using is to blast every pore on her screen. Like every pore is visible, where like
Really?
usually lighting on TV hides pores. It's what it's there for. And so they're like, oh my gosh, look at this normal looking woman with braces and glasses. And it's like, yeah, I do wish she were a little bit more fashionable with some of her like style choices. And like, she could pick a different glasses frame if she wants to like not stand out as much, but she wants to stand out. That's fine.
I mean,
But they
that was the
like,
popular glasses frame. I'm looking at her
right.
picture.
But like they try extra hard to make her like ugly, which is the whole point of the show. But then Christopher Gorham, they just slap a pair of glasses on and they're like, good enough. And it's like, that man is disgustingly beautiful.
Like,
You
try
cannot
again,
tell me
because
differently.
that didn't work.
You need to do something different. It's not going to work. He has a great jawline. I'm sorry. Like,
I'm seeing a lot of like awkwardly parted hair and frizzy hair and then oversized clothing is what I'm noticing, is like
yes.
that this is how they make her look strange, where like the glasses don't look like they're the right size for her face, where they're a little too small, and then the clothes are also just the wrong size, is
Yes.
what I'm noticing just from Google images.
Yes. And so the first couple episodes just made me feel bad, but I'm interested because like people love the show. It's beloved. And I'm like, maybe once they get past the like mean cattiness or like, I don't know. It's a weird show.
The other thing though, Hannah, like sometimes people have weird nostalgia for shows of this era. Like I have it too for certain shows where it's like problematic things really happen and we're just like weirdly nostalgic for it.
Maybe. So I'm gonna see, like, it's an easy walk, like, except for the parts that were highly upsetting, which is like some of the bullying goes too far, where it's just like, are you kidding me? But then I'm like, well, is this actually true for fashion magazines, or is it just early 2000s?
I mean, it happened.
It could go either way.
I was thinking, like you saying, like some of these things, like the show is beloved. I was thinking specifically of like The Office and how that show is. Like people adore that show, and that's become kind of my background show again. And I texted you and our friend Veronica of Ronnie Reads Regularly that every time I rewatch that show or have it on the background, I start to hate Jim more. And I think it's for like similar reasons, like of that time, like that 2004 to 2010 era, we were so like into people being mean and laughing at it, and people being inappropriate and laughing at it, and so it unfortunately might be like some of these things that you're having issues with might be just a product of the time, because these sound familiar to The Office as well.
It was just like I don't know, I was just kind of flummoxed by it, and yeah, so that's my ugly Betty foray. I'm gonna keep watching because I'm interested, but also stop telling me America Ferrera is ugly. She's not, objectively. She's
not
gorgeous.
ugly at all.
And like, oh gosh. And there's just so many things with that show where I'm like, really? Where like the sister sells like an MLM, and I'm like, can we not talk about the socioeconomic issues? Like there's a reason Betty's probably not dressing as nice, or like, does she not care about fashion? Like Andy and the Devil Wears Prada. Like there just doesn't seem to be a reason, and it's driving me crazy. Like she's a smart girl. she should be like, they have some stuff with money, but it's like never, it's like that early 2000s way of money of like, oh,
We're
they're
not
so
gonna
hard up for
talk
cash,
about it.
but they also own their house in Queens. Like,
Interesting.
it's just an interesting way to do things. So I don't know.
Yeah, that
Um,
is fascinating.
but it does have some elements of like Jane the Virgin telenovela style
Hmm.
stuff, and I do enjoy that. So
I love Jane the Virgin.
I
I
know.
also love America Ferrera and Superstore. Superstore is one of my favorites.
Right. So I feel like I was like, well, America Ferrera wouldn't like do me dirty, but like some of the show does you dirty.
I don't know. She's probably been done dirty a lot, unfortunately.
But then it also has that woman who played Quinn on How I Met Your Father, which does like the most specific teeth acting I've ever seen in a
Oh,
woman.
interesting. Okay,
Uh,
you know how some people talk about like, oh, this actor acts with their neck a lot, or this actor acts with their teeth. I don't notice it until people point it out.
oh, I'm so sorry. Go watch Quinn from How I Met Your Mother and her teeth acting because it's
I'll have
so
to
specific.
see it now.
She just like she speaks like in a very like, and it's just like, why?
Interesting.
And then you just have such a wide mouth. I don't know.
Because people were talking about the Bridgerton actress, how she uses her neck when
Yeah.
she gets upset, like her neck like clenches and everything, and you can
Mhm.
see the muscles in her neck clenching and releasing, and it's like she becomes extremely stiff in certain situations, and it's just like she has very strong neck, but I never noticed it before, and until people pointed it out. I was like, oh, wow.
Yeah. She does a lot of that's the same with Miley Cyrus's teeth, always like shush, shush. Hers was more from like the way she spoke, but she always kind of talks like this, like
Yeah, she talks like she has like a little too much spit in her mouth.
yeah, and it's just like, okay, honey, like swallow. But for but for reading, I just listened to the audiobook The Whispers by Ashley Audrain. It's a very interesting
Did she write
book.
the push?
She did.
Okay.
So I started reading this book in the month of my mother's death, which is never a good idea when I knew Ashley Audrain writes about complicated mother stories.
Mm-hmm.
But shocking, this is a complicated mother story. And it's kind of like about a suburban like area with a bunch of different families. There's like an older Polish or Portuguese woman who lives there. There is a woman who's like runs her own business. She's kind of the breadwinner of the family. And her son is likely autistic, but it's kind of undiagnosed. There's just like some behavioral issues and some other things where like that's going on. And then there is like the friend across the street who's a stay-at-home mom and kind of hates her husband. And then there is a young couple who they're having infertility issues, and so it's kind of like throughout all of them, and you find out throughout that like the breadwinner mom is lots of people know that she screams at her son who has issues, and at the beginning of the book he falls out of a third-story window.
Oh my gosh.
And he is in a coma, and so like it's kind of all about like what happened surrounding that, and like there's a little mystery. There's some weird stuff going on. I would say like part of the most interesting thing about this is like it does look at like white motherhood and what it means to be a woman who is like verbally abusive and how often that kind of goes unsaid or unlooked at, because lots of people seem to understand that there's something going on, but no one ever gets involved. And it's very interesting to read about, like a lot, and even the book does a good job of doing that, where like there were moments where I felt very sorry for her, and then I was like, oh, but she is like likely abusive, and it kind of shows how willing we are to forgive certain types of women. And I thought that was very interesting. It was very strange, and Ashley Audrain does a good job of showing you complex motherhood stories and messy people. It's all pure mess. I would say that I preferred the push, but this isn't this isn't a bad one. First one of my favorite reviews of this is Audrain makes me never want to get married or have kids. And that's like true, because like everyone in this book is awful. And yeah, it's a very interesting tale of like just different complex emotions and like what it means to do these things. And yeah, it's a weird story, but I enjoyed it. Like I was, I would say it's a thriller, but a good thriller, which is different for us. We
Yeah, we
identify those
don't.
differently. So yeah, I thought it was
So it
very
is a
good.
thriller, or would you say it's more like psychological?
I would say it's more like suspenseful, psychological.
Okay.
But
Because
like
to me, those are like different things in my mind. I don't know why, but I associate like thriller with being like someone was murdered and we have to figure out who did it. And I
yeah,
don't know why I think of like situations like this as being more psychological, where it's like there's a crime and some bad stuff is happening, but it's not like murder mystery.
yeah, it's definitely not like it is definitely like something happened, what happened, like who did
Okay.
what. Um, but super weird. I don't know. It's very, very, very
Interesting.
weird. Yeah. And then it wasn't exactly what I expected because there wasn't much whispering going on. Like I was expecting like a lot of
The
gossip.
audiobook was totally whispered. It's
Well,
an
like,
ASMR style
well, like
audiobook.
the first chapter is about how like there's a moment at a party where the woman like loses her absolute shit on the son and the
Oh.
windows open so everyone heard it, and like it was above and beyond what it is to like lose your shit on your son. Like everyone was really
Mm-hmm.
uncomfortable, and then you kind of expect them to be like all whispering about, because it's called the whispers, you kind
Yeah.
of expect them all to be gossiping and being like, did you hear it, do you know what happened, da, da, da. And then it don't really happen. Like they just kind of mentioned, like, yeah, none of the moms are really into hanging out with her anymore. It's just like, okay. It's just very strange. I just was like, there wasn't much whispering going on. There's just like some people figuring some stuff out. It's
Oh
more
my. Where you
mommy
thought there would
detective
maybe be some
agency.
gossip.
Yeah, where you thought like there would be like text change and like doing something, but it was just like, no,
Which
it's
that
just
could
the
have been an
storyline.
interesting element to bring into it if you were getting additional character
Right.
perspectives, and then that was having you kind of play with whether or not this was the true story that you're getting. Like
Right.
that could have been cool.
Yeah, but then like there's like one moment where one of the characters like shoots a text off to the group chat. I'm like, oh good, we'll get to see like people getting involved. And then they just don't. Like, what,
Oh.
what? It's called The Whispers.
Oh.
Yeah, but anyways, that's what I was reading, watching, and or enjoying. Shall we dive in back into the Murderbot
Back
Diaries?
into the Murderbot Diaries. I am so excited. Hopefully, I remember everything because I was a little nervous about that because I'm like, we're going into this recap and it's been a hot minute since I read it. So,
So we'll see how good I do on the recap. I do apologize, guys, if you guys read this and you're like, there's so much more that happened in that book. But a lot of the book is more about like feelings and vibes than like actual plot. I feel like I could get through the plot like in 20 minutes, but we're not going to do that. It's
right,
just
right,
like
right.
it's more internal, this book. So be
There's a
prepared.
lot
And
of processing,
mm-hmm.
and we're dealing with a lot of like overarching themes that are being brought back.
Right. So it's very different. So we open
Yeah.
up with the most heart-wrenching moment where Murderbot lets us know that Brightwash once told it that it hates planets because it's scared to be abandoned. And it's like, no, it's because it's boring. And then it goes,
Mhm.
I know it's a lie, but and he's like, there are things that are less boring, but they're usually less boring in a bad way. They are still on the planet from 2 books ago.
From
Uh
Network Effect,
from Network
full
Effect.
length novel, because we learned that we did not read these in the right order
Well,
from Martha.
Martha
Martha,
didn't publish them in the right order.
so
Like,
Martha says to us in the interview, I distinctly remember this moment. She says, "Oh yeah, you're supposed to read Fugitive Telemetry before Network Effect." I could not have been more clear about that, and people still debate what order you're supposed to read them in. And you and I both were like, yeah, that's why would people
well, the
debate
thing
that?"
is like she's
Because
talking
we
about like
covered
in
them.
well, yeah, we covered them in the publishing order, and we did say, well, technically this happens before the events of the last one, but like
Yeah.
this is the publishing order. But I love it when an author is like, well, why wouldn't you read them in order of timeline? And it's like, because they were published in a different order.
Well, for the
No
people that
offense.
read them as they're coming out, obviously they can't go back in time.
Well, she also said, like, I can't believe people like question that because what like no, she said that they questioned the timeline. She's like, some people still think it comes out because it comes out after, that it's in a different order. And it's like, no, it's obviously before the events of network telemetry.
Network effect.
Network effect, sorry. So they're still on the alien planet that had the contamination in the pre-corp rim, and where Murderbot made Murderbot 2.0. Everyone go back and listen to our old episodes on that book.
If you have not read Network Effect, because I know that some people have only read the novellas, they have not read the full-length novel. So if you have not read Network Effect, that's required reading for everything going forward. Likely.
Yes. Because you don't know what Murderbot 2.0 is.
No.
So in Network Effect, we also had a sec unit go rogue by Murderbot disengaging its modular unit after it gave it the option to.
Its governor module got hijacked.
It calls itself 3 because we had Murderbot 2.0, and then it's like, well, my name is 3, obviously. And Murderbot's like, not obviously. Why would you name yourself that? Like,
but also 3 is just kind of hilarious because like throughout this book, Murderbot's trying to like kind of get a gauge for 3 and cannot figure 3 out. And it's like, do you want to do this? And 3 is always game for things. And Murderbot's just like, I can't tell if you want to do this or not. Do you want to do this? Like, I'm giving you options. You have free will now. Decide.
And it's just kind of like, I'm just a baby.
Murderbot's like, I want you to decide. And 3's like, I want to decide.
And then Murderbot will be like, look, I know it could choose, but it also could choose to murder people. So I just can't trust it. And it's just like, Murderbot, pick one or the other. Like, it's the most unassuming bot.
Yes.
It just
Murderbot, don't be a hypocrite. Come on.
Also was horrified because you find out that we find out that 3 loves a good documentary and loves a nonfiction. And Murderbot is every single person on Bookstagram going like, what do you mean you love nonfiction? What does that mean though? Like, please tell me what you mean, because why wouldn't you like fiction?
Murderbot's like, I love A Court of Thorns and Roses, and I can't understand why you love biographies.
Like, I did not want to read the MLK biography. Thank you very much. And it's like, but do you have any more downloads on like the nature of moss? And Murderbot's like, no, I don't want to know about that.
I think 3 is hilarious in this. Just for the way that Murderbot reacts to it.
Oh yeah. It has very little time on the page, but Murderbot is like rife with thoughts about 3.
And so bothered.
And so like we cut to 48 hours before Murderbot has that moment of like, oh, Brightwash says I hate planets. Art is asking Murderbot for a status as it's scouting the planet for any issues. It's describing something and then it suddenly redacts itself and says that has to deal with redacted. And it's kind of talking about how it's nervous, so we don't really know what's going on. It's out with Rati and some of Art's humans. They are looking at the Agbots that are there, and they're having a huge issue with the Agbots, with the alien infestation that overtook them. They keep getting like corrupted and attacking them. We have Iris there, who is Art's favorite, and Murderbot is super nervous for everyone. It's not like the typical nerves it's been having. It's like a little bit on another degree of like, I'm so nervous. I cannot focus. Why is everyone here? Why are they with me? But I don't want them to leave me. Like, it's a different energy.
I think we definitely are seeing more of Murderbot's like insecurities and more of Murderbot's like mental health kind of shine through here, where we have not seen this before, where it's like before it was kind of like, like you said, it felt more like uncertainty, and now to me it's like full-blown anxiety that we're getting, and so I don't know that Murderbot recognizes it quite yet.
No, it is having a lot of feelings, and it also, like, we do have to remember in the last book, Murderbot did like almost die for a moment because it had 2 parts of itself that it wasn't really ready for that kind of function.
It was also worried about Art and everything, so it's gone through a lot.
And so it realizes that a certain schematic Art and the humans came up with to fight the Agbot won't work. It says like it kind of should have been more proactive in speaking up, but it's been off of its game. It kind of like lets them go in over their head. It's like down there, it's about to fight, but then it gets a ping from another sec unit, and it thinks it's 3, which is off with the other people, but then it realizes that it's Barish Estranza, which is the corporate entity that technically like came upon the planet to like overtake it and take all its people because they were a corporate planet that's pretty much work slaves, all that fun thing.
Yeah. These were basically indentured servants that they were trying to like reclaim.
And we have seen Bera Estranza before in previous novels. I forget which one, but it's one.
All Systems Red, I believe.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think it's all the way back in All Systems Red where they tried to overtake things
because
and they got in trouble.
Was when the company was involved. So I think All Systems Red was the last time we had mentions of Bera Estranza.
And there is a huge diplomatic issue going on because these people were a corporate owned entity, and the entity, like, they want to make themselves free. They have been left behind. So technically, like, they were abandoned. And so now it's like, are these people able to be owned, or are they free citizens? And the university is arguing that they are free citizens, and Bera Estranza is like, nope, we want them.
And Art's with the university, like, look, they have options. I have lots of guns to make sure they have options.
Yes, Art is very threatening at all points of time, and Art is always like, maybe I should just murder everyone. And Art, like, Murderbot's like, Art, like, what is wrong with you? And so the sec unit comes in to help with the Agbot, and it hits the Agbot, but it almost hits Murderbot, like 0.2 degrees from a murder attempt. And everyone's like, dude, we all know what it was doing. Like, Bera Estranza comes over to talk with them, and Iris asks if they will be billed for the assistance. And Murderbot is like, that's not a joke. We are preparing for a very mighty bill because Bera Estranza nickels and dimes you. Insert lawyer joke. And so Bera Estranza has been talking a big game. They tried to intimidate Art. Also, it also notes that, like, Art will randomly just like change numbers for bills that like it sends over or like stuff just to mess with.
Well, because I think am I remembering this right? The communication is happening via Art drone.
Yes.
So Art, the like ship, has sent the Art drone, which is still Art, just a subconnection of Art. It's a little confusing to explain, but it's like still Art, but
well, it's kind of
like
in the last book how like Murderbot like made itself two entities, but like it was still one thing. It's just like it's wholly outside of itself, but within itself. Like once it comes back, it just kind of subsumes the entire piece of it again.
Yes, and thank you. That's a much better description.
Art can do that because Art's more capable of doing that than Murderbot is. So Art like sends itself down into a drone that is like wholly Art, but it's just like not communicating with a certain portion of itself until it returns. And so that's kind of what they're doing.
That's the one that's like making these references and everything.
Yeah. And so they like, but they talk about how like some of Murderbot's people are like reviewing the bill because they're like, we can't trust Art with the documents because suddenly there's just like numbers that enter in there
are
we're all, like,
changed, and it's like, wait a minute.
And it's like, what's your thinking on this? And Art's like, it's correct. They're like,
I know, I would love
Art. And then at the end of the chapter, Iris thanks the sec unit that helped them. And the company is looking at her like, what are you talking about? It is a sec unit. And then we talk about Art's negotiator, Kareem, who has been fighting with Bera Estranza over the rights of the human workers. They're trying to negotiate for personhood. They like have this kind of contract, this like edict drafted up about these people and like how they are their own persons and everything. And like they've had some issues because there's fighting factions who like people are like, we want to leave, but we want to stay. We like being infested. We didn't like being infested. Like there's a whole lot going on with these groups of people who like were part of this alien like issue before and now like want to go with Bera Estranza or like the university's like, we're working in your best interest, we promise.
Which all of this seems very realistic to me, honestly, that you would have all sorts of different opinions on what should be happening even within that group of people.
Yeah. And like it's very interesting. It's very diplomatic. Murderbot is watching through some of the drones with 3. They're hiding the fact that 3 has been tampered with, the governor module. They're just kind of like, this is just our sec unit. Look at our sec unit. And Murderbot is kind of hiding the fact that it's a Murderbot, or it's a sec unit as well. And then everything comes to a screeching halt when they find out that there is another group of people who are up at one of the poles who left before the contamination because they were sick of everyone else's bullshit, pretty much. Like, they're like, they were sick of it. They left. They're up there now.
Well, and they don't even know really if they're alive.
Yes, because they haven't been in contact with them for so long because of the alien contamination. And they're like, well, they could be dead. We don't know how they survived. We don't know what they ate. We don't even know what it looks like up there. They always came to us.
Yep.
But this could like ruin the entire negotiations because they've contracted for the people like in this particular area. It's a question, it's a legal question on if they like subsume this other group. They need to go get them and bring them into the collective to agree to it because then they're on a stronger footing. And they are up at the poles in like a cave system, so it's going to be harder to find for Murderbot. They decide that they're going
to it's like really interesting the way that it's described to this, because it's almost like tunnels.
Yeah,
is what it is basically. I guess I didn't get the cave aspect, but that probably makes more sense for a planet to have caves. But I was thinking like
it's
almost
probably more a
sewer like tunnels.
Yeah, you're probably right, and I'm just calling it a cave because that's where my mind goes. But like, yeah, like a tunnel system. It was built into the world, like because they were terraforming up there. Like you have different like tunnel systems and everything, so that you are able to terraform. And so they started living up there in one of those areas. So the university decides that they need to send some people. It's Murderbot, Tariq, who is from Art, Iris from Art, and then Rati, to find them after confirming that the humans could possibly be up there. Mensa asks if Murderbot is okay with doing this, or if they can send one of the other security details and or 3. And Murderbot's kind of like, nah, I don't trust anyone. Like, I trust me and me alone. And it's like, Murderbot.
It's also like tragic too, because Murderbot's just like, I'm not okay, but don't tell anybody. Right. And I hate that because it's continually having to be like, or thinking it has to be the strong one for everyone, that it has to take control and manage a situation when it's like, we've got a lot of people here that can help.
Me with planning my wedding, where I'm like, I have to do it, and my sister's like, but you could ask for help, and I'm like, but I have to do it. This is my cross to bear, and no one else's. So fun things like control issues. That is Murderbot. Murderbot is me.
It's the anxiety.
It's the anxiety. Art downloads itself onto the shuttle to be with Murderbot and Art Drone, like you said. Again, like it's still a part of Art, but it exists in a different online function. It won't be able to communicate with Art at all times, but like when Art is online with itself, it can communicate between the two. It kind of talks about how Murderbot tried to do something similar with 2.0, but it wasn't quite as effective. And it's also like blaming 2.0 for the redacted. They also kind of talk about how this planet was a terraforming planet, which is awful for the environment. So the people have to be kept at a certain distance away. So like they have to travel.
Which I never would have thought about that. I've read several like things on terraforming and how these people go and are creating new life on planets. And I never would have thought honestly about like, oh, there's environmental effects to the people. Duh, Laura, you idiot.
So yeah, it's just it's an interesting way of like showing the realities of the world.
Martha Wells does an excellent job of bringing it back to a standpoint of we have to consider the consequences of the things that we do.
Yes. Murderbot has a few less of its drones and it's freaking out about it. But it also talks about how 3 was like, do you want some of my drones? And Murderbot's like, I don't trust your drones. And so, and then
poor 3.
And then poor Murderbot, because Murderbot in the next second will be like, I'm such an idiot. It's just like,
I know.
Just say it. It's like that anxiety where you'll feel better if you do something, but then like this morning I woke up and I was like, my house is a mess. I just want my house to be clean. And then I came home and I was like, yeah, maybe I'll scroll on TikTok for 10 minutes. And it's like, maybe you wouldn't need to scroll on the TikTok if you would just clean your house and make yourself feel better.
Funny.
So yeah. I need to find a new therapist. This book is telling me that.
We all need therapy.
We all need therapy. But like Murderbot's also freaking out that it has less drones. They kind of find a place they could potentially land after traveling for a while. Murderbot also doesn't love Tariq, but you find out that like Tariq is new to Perry, so like none of them really know what kind of energy he brings, and we'll find out more about him shortly.
Yeah, this gets funny.
But they try to find a place to land, but they're like, but could people be under there? It's pretty flat. And Murderbot's like, I guess we all can't land together. It's like, I must go down alone. And they're all fighting about it. But they kind of,
because doesn't Iris offer to go?
yeah. And Murderbot's like, I can't because like Art will kill me. And then like,
You're Art's favorite.
And then like, Tariq is kind of like arguing with them, but then Rathi and Iris are like, hey, it was agreed upon. Iris is leading this mission, but like Murderbot is the security detail. So we trust Murderbot. It gets to do what it's saying.
Yeah, it has the authority when it comes to keeping people safe.
And so Rathi's like, are you sure you want to go down? And Murderbot is like, Rathi, I have guns in my arms.
It's okay. I don't really want to do it, but I feel obligated. So
but
yes.
I'm also qualified. Murderbot looks over everything. It's questioning a lot. Why, like, it's kind of on this landing pad. It's kind of getting the lay of the land. But it's getting really nervous about like, is something closer? There's security issues. Tariq keeps asking for updates like over and over and over again, and like they're like
to the point where it does become like kind of concerning to the reader because you're like, is this person shady? Because when Murderbot had questioned it originally, I'm like, this is probably just like a Garothan situation where Murderbot hates Garoth, and then when you get to this point, you're like, okay, something's going on. This seems shady.
But like everyone else is like, you should stop micromanaging. Murderbot will tell us when it needs to. But then Art is also like, hey, you need to check in more. Like you forget these are people they need to have, you know. And Murderbot's like, of course, I'm so stupid, but also I'm right. It continues to look and they ask if they can land. It says no. But they don't, but it doesn't think they would trust it for a redacted reason. And then it finds a rail that goes back into a hatch. They find out that it's a delivery hatch. They will still have to move around. This makes Murderbot a bit relieved, but it is beating itself up for not doing its job better. They keep looking at how to access the hatch to figure out a way to send drones down, but they're freaked out because they find out that the pre-corporation rim is drawing power, and it likely shouldn't be able to do that, especially near the terraforming area. So that's concerning. It's looking at everything and considering the site, the fact that the alien contamination may be there, when suddenly it has a moment of redaction and Art tells it to stop. And then it's like, oh, we're back to the beginning where it talks about how Brightwash said that it hated planets. So
this I thought was kind of fun that we have this moment where it's like, okay, so here's the deal. Almost like if you're watching this in a movie form, it's just like it freezes and you're like, so here's the deal. Like Emperor's New Groove style.
And they head down in one of the Artmobiles, and Tariq is driving a bit fast and making Murderbot nervous. It's having a hard time sending things along, like getting its drones out. Murderbot wants to go on alone. There's a lot of nervousness with the fact that the colony doesn't know anything about them and only knows about the potential alien contamination from the other site. So like they may react poorly if suddenly random people are there. And then we find out that Tariq hates the corporation a lot because they made him kill as a human. He was in a corporate combat squad. He had been placed with the art team, and Seth had raised objections to like Tariq being rash to being in a combat squad, etc. And like Art and Seth didn't like it, but it has worked out so far. But Murderbot knows that they said so far it's worked out. So
it's one of those things where it's like, there's a definite conflict of interest here, but this person has been effective for us. So we're going to continue working with them until he's no longer an issue, or until he becomes an issue, but he could become an issue at any point.
Right. This is also a cute moment where someone calls Murderbot an ex-sec unit, and Rathi is like, that's not how that works. They are always a sec unit. They like, it is part of its personhood, you know, like, Murderbot sends the humans back to the transport because it's getting nervous. It also discussed how it feels really enclosed and can't imagine why a human would want to come into this tunnel system voluntarily. It makes everything more difficult, but in addition, it also discusses how 3 tried to give it its armor and drones, and Murderbot turned it down, like I said before. They see a round
because it mentions how it does feel like safer in armor, even though it mentions like, I know that's stupid because I have like all these things, you know, that I can change and augment about my body, but at the same time it's kind of nice to have that armor.
Right. And so it's kind of talking, and it sees a round hatch, and Rothy is like, why are round hatches more scary? And Tariq is like, that's not a thing. And Iris is like, actually it is a thing. And Art's like, yes, I looked into it, and media shows that they often use round hatches to make you feel unsettled. And then Iris is like, it's actually about the pillars surrounding the round image and like the differences of that. So um so they're kind of arguing about that. Murderbot is going off on its own. It isn't as good as letting the people know what's going on, even though it's supposed to. It's also having issues with talking to everyone, checking in. Art Drone says it will go with it, but Murderbot's like, no, you need to stay with the humans. And like Art's trying to manipulate, and like tries to manipulate Art into being like, don't you want to stay with Iris?
Which
then
I'm just gonna jump in for a second, because like the whole not checking in and everything, I feel like this is just honestly such a beautiful depiction of like mental health journeys, and how we see Murderbot is going on this journey even throughout this experience, and how it's checking in less, and it's not feeling right. It isn't talking to other people, and it's kind of drawing further and further away. And that seems really
dangerous in some ways.
A thing that a lot of people do when they're struggling. So
yeah. And so Murderbot suddenly hears a non-standard transmission, and it freaks out. And then it says, so about that redaction thing. And so we find out that Murderbot was in a room with everyone after the events of the book before
Network Effect.
Yes. 87% of its attention was on the group having arguments about what to do with the colonists, when suddenly it loses all track of time and it's being restarted in Art's medical bay. No one knows why, but something neurological happened to Murderbot during this time. And they find out that Murderbot had a false memory about an alien-infested human trying to eat its leg. They don't know where it came from. It's not from anything like corrupted in its system. It's pretty much Murderbot had a nightmare. And
it's having like hallucinations.
Yeah. But like it doesn't remember the hallucination. Like it just kind of had a shutdown and like an inability to
blacks out.
Yeah, it blacks out. And so it freaks people out. Mental lied to Amena about it, but it happened in front of a lot of people. So now Murderbot is scared and embarrassed. Murderbot comes to after this irregular transmission and was out for about 0.06 seconds and is horrified by this amount. They're trying to figure out what happened. They start talking to the transmission, and it appears to be a pre-corporation interface type machine that is there to help the humans who are up at the polls. It says hi in the cutest way possible. It's like, being acknowledged, hand clasp, being acknowledged, wave, being acknowledged,
which is so
bow. Cute. It's so cute.
It reminds me of like how like before emojis were a thing, you would send like the little end parentheses, colon end parentheses.
And like it's just adorable. They start communicating with it, and they tell the computer about what happened. It asks for confirmation, and like Murderbot again communicates in a way that's effective for the computer and sends it a file. They then see through a camera, and they realize that that's my notes. Barish Estranza, I just put BE.
I think it's called BE in the book,
okay.
isn't it?
Oh, maybe. So BE is there with the sec unit. And so everyone's freaking out because BE got there and it's talking to the colonists. And like everyone also has a conversation about like, hey, do we let this sec unit free too? And Murderbot is like, can we stop giving sec units free will? I don't know if I trust that.
Well, it's kind of one of those things where it's like, this would definitely be a red flag. We cannot just be going for all the sec units every time we see them all the time.
Right. They're gonna notice, guys. And they're like, we were in a very specific situation with 3 where Murderbot 2.0 was able to do this, but it was like a very specific situation in a very specific time. Like, and this sec unit could freak out and like
it also mentions fire. That what if it just shoots us? Like, we don't know what it's going to do if we
like free
hijack
will
its governor
free
module.
Will. Yeah. And so they don't know how it will react to gaining agency. They're also trying to get to the they're kind of talking to what they call the ad call 2, which is the adamantine colony 2. So the ad call 2 group, and Iris starts talking to them, but the BE group is trying to convince the colonists to go with them, and that they're just trying to quote help. And Murderbot is kind of like, damn it, there's no reason to trust either side. They don't know. Um, so Murderbot goes out scouting. It talks to Ad Call 2 about the sec unit. And Ad Call 2 is like, I've been trying to say hi, and the sec unit won't speak to me. And Murderbot's like, yeah, it's not going to. It's fine.
Hmm.
It kind of keeps looking at how BE got there, that it was like kind of a different system. It didn't just follow them, but like now it knows a different way out. Then it starts getting bored and it starts watching media, and Ad Call 2 is like, what are you doing? And Murderbot's like, here, access to my entertainment. And then Ad Call 2 does the same. It gives it like its own media
Mhm.
file. And Murderbot is like, this is a treasure trove. And it like recognizes some of the media. And it's like, why is it different? And Art's like, oh, it's just like a different language barrier from like time
Mhm.
before. So like things change. Um,
It's kind of like
Murderbot.
us watching AMC.
And then Murderbot is like uh thinking about the time it blacked out, and it admits, and like this is such a sad part where Murderbot's like, listen, the truth is I probably have seen a human eaten the way I imagined it
Mhm.
happening to me. But like it was before I hacked my governor module, it's before I had any memory, but like now I know that this happened, and it's scary. Um and then it
It's
remembers that.
terrifying because it's like it's combining real life experiences and making them into things that didn't happen. It's the combination of the two things
Mhm.
that it becomes terrifying.
And then it also remembers that like Art came and talked to it after it made everyone leave after the first blackout, and Art starts using trauma response therapy on it. And
Hmm.
Murderbot is like, I need you to leave now. I am not a human. And it's like, well, it affected like the human parts of you. And Murderbot did not like that. Um, so that's happening. And now there's a storm brewing up at the poles. And the Ad Call 2 people offer everyone shelter for the night. They aren't sure they should take it, but the wind is picking up. As they are wondering, like they start meeting with people to like discuss what's going on, and they wonder if BE has already poisoned the well to them. And we also find out that Rati and Tariq are involved.
Well, because
And they're
they,
also fighting about it because like Tariq may have been involved with another member before they got involved.
mhm.
And like Murderbot runs into them in the hall, like
I
back
was
at
gonna
the
say they come
base.
into, or Murderbot like comes into this one hallway and they're like coming out of it and they're like,
And Murderbot's like, what's going
nothing.
on? You guys are fighting. And Rati is like, we're fighting about sex stuff. And Murderbot's like, I need to leave.
Like, I didn't hear that.
uh, so they find out that Bear Estranza wants to meet in person and negotiate with one of Murderbot's team, and they decide to send Murderbot out. But as it's walking out, it is Leonide, who is from the first novel and saw
Hmm.
Murderbot as a sec unit.
Yes.
And so they're all like, maybe she won't recognize him. And then she walks up and
And
she's
then
like, you are a sec unit.
you're that sec unit.
And she is confused why they sent the sec unit because it's supposed to be equal parties negotiating. And then she just starts insulting it, saying it's only
Hmm.
there to attack and imprison. And Murderbot is like, I am here to negotiate.
Hmm.
And it like keeps answering in ways that it is trained to do. And she's being super condescending.
It's
Um,
also a situation too where you feel terrible for Murderbot because Murderbot is an anxious person and
yeah.
or anxious being and is having a hard time communicating because it's never been in a situation like this before.
Mhm.
And then it's made infinitely more difficult when it's like this pressure is put on. So you don't you not only have to deliver this like really difficult information that's hard to get across, but you also have to like defend yourself.
Mhm. Well,
And
because she starts being like, why aren't you being honest with the university
yeah.
people, or why aren't you being honest with the Ad Call 2 people? Like, you guys
Hmm.
want to control them. And Murderbot's like, that's not true. And it's like, you want to leave them behind, don't you? Even though they can't feed themselves after the Agbots are all contaminated. And Murderbot's like, yeah, the Agbots are being contaminated. That's why we want to remove them. And then she's like,
It's a lot of
that's
twisting things around to make it seem like they're the bad ones and Barish Estrada is
it's all
not.
just hashtag fake news. And so
Oh yeah.
as Leonide is like talking, Murderbot realizes that they're live streaming to the Ad Call 2 people. And like this was the entire reason for the negotiation, is to make sure that BE looked good and that the university is shady. And so everyone on the team is freaking out because of what it will look like to all the people. And then Murderbot has an idea
Mhm.
and starts pulling from Dr. Brightwash's documentary that he's been working on about the company and information on what corporations do. And then it brings it to the team, and everyone's like, we could do this. We could do this. Like, this is a good
We
idea.
could make a documentary.
We could make a truthful documentary about how evil BE is. And so they start having Murderbot write things, like kind of write like an overlay message to the people. They have Murderbot like interview Tariq about what it meant to be on a corporate death squad. And like they all band together and make a documentary. And then
they
like
use education.
Yeah, and they send
to
it out.
Their foe.
That's what they do. And so they send it out to AdCall2 and they're like, hey, could you like have people watch this? And then the downloads start pouring in. And so Leonide kind of realizes that she's met her match and they all meet with her again. And then they're like live streaming it again. And she's like, oh, fine, add this to your sales pitch. And they're like, yeah, you already did that. And so Leonide is kind of like almost ready to admit defeat when all of the sudden her own people start shooting at her and Murderbot saves her. You find out that like this isn't a huge loss to her to lose this contract. Like she's pretty high up, but it is a huge loss to the people around her because they wanted a bonus and they need it to survive.
Yes.
And so they were going to like double cross the team, not respect the treaty, like get these people on like a corporate rim and not respect their agency. And so they're like, we're going to use a sec unit to like kill her and like take it over. And
they're basically going to hijack the entire situation. They were terrorists within this.
And so Murderbot is able to like stop one of the sec units, like the one sec unit that's there, but they couldn't really like shut it down because if they do, the second sec unit will be brought in and others will get notified. And they like can't do that without warning others. And there's like a lot of figuring out what to do. Tariq is like getting down into the tunnel system to try to get the people out of there. And Tariq is like, oh my gosh, they're coming with me. They recognize me from the documentary. But like Murderbot
Which is cute.
I know. But Murderbot has to go help and like get all these people. They are trying to get the second shuttle to arrive to get everyone out. And Murderbot is working really hard, but they like are trying to get to the second bot to attack it to make sure that like nothing happens. And Leonide's trying to help in like the only way it can, or she can, but she's also the worst.
I was gonna say it's almost just like she's kind of going along with the motions. She's not really that helpful.
Right. And so Murderbot is like using all of its scout drones. They're all getting shut down. It's very upset by it, but it is like working its hardest. And it kind of goes into the system. It's using AdCall2 to kind of make sure that it can't be hacked, making sure that everything's getting out and everyone's getting out safely. And then it's kind of like a race to get to Art so that they can start communicating with the main system and they can kind of get better protection. And like they're considering like attacking BE, but they also like Murderbot doesn't want any more dead humans, and it doesn't want like anyone to take them hostage. It has to like get through to some of the hostages, protect them, save them. And so it's kind of like it's a good system of Murderbot finally working with like AdCall2 and working with the Audrain and finally like working with others to get everyone out.
Well, because Murderbot definitely has trust issues. So it is nice to kind of see it be like, okay, well, I need to have a little help here.
And like it uses it to like help get down the sec units and like get them all shut down. And like they kind of know that no one knows what will happen with the sec units. At one point, Audrain like makes a comment of like, oh my gosh, I've missed seeing the side of you. And Murderbot notices that Leonide just thinks that the Audrain is like some other person on the ship. And it's like, oh, she has no idea.
Just wait.
And so they finally like, they're running and they're trying to like hunt, like fight the different hostile sec units. It's, it's a final showdown. And so Murderbot ends up actually disabling the governor modules and giving them a choice and being like, look, you can do whatever you want. And the sec units decide to stay behind in order to protect the people because they're like, hey, we would actually like have an issue if they knew. So why don't you leave? And no one has to know what happened. And Murderbot like feels a certain way about leaving a sec unit behind because like it's not a good feeling to be left in that,
Well, it's a scary thing too because it's like the choice that they're making is to protect everyone, and it's scary that they have to kind of remain in this servitude in order to protect people and know that they have to do that.
Right. And so they end up like moving out of the tunnel. They're able to get through like construction access. And at one point, like Leonide asks if Murderbot is actually a sec unit, and Iris is like, you can mind your own business. And like that's not important.
It's not relevant to what we're doing. So just shut up.
And so they finally get back to Art, and they save everyone, and like they are able to negotiate a proper treaty. They're very excited about this. It's good to like have some distance. And it kind of just, there's a little bit of discussion how like the world kind of keeps on turning with these awful corporate people.
How unfortunately there's like tons of other corporations and they're not done.
Right. And so that is that. And then we kind of got to Art talking to Murderbot. There is a backup ship that comes up called Holism, and Art hates Holism. And Art, it's so beautiful. Like at one point, Art's like, I don't hate anything. It's just I am discerning in my company. My judgment in this area is impeccable. And Murderbot goes, it keeps pinging me. And Art goes, don't answer it. It's just trying to annoy me.
I so hope we get more holism. Like
I know. Forward. It's so funny. And so they kind of talk about like what the team did to like get the separationers like into the treaty, how there's like infrastructure proposal. And so like Holism is just kind of talking to it, and Art's like, stop doing that. And it's like, I think it's just bored. Murderbot said, I don't give a shit. And then
I love the way that Murderbot messes with Art though in this moment.
But it is adorable. Art hates Holism so much, but Holism is just like Art. And they're kind of just talking about like where are we going next? Like we have this team, we have everyone safe, and like Murderbot knows that it's like mental health isn't like over. It needs to do trauma recovery. It's talking to Dr. Brightwash about it. And it's like looking into programs and everything, but it knows that it can at least do its job. The end.
Okay, sorry, we do that so quickly. My dog needs to go to the bathroom.
It's okay. But actually, it was the last 2 pages. But guys, this book is so good.
We're going to talk more about it next week, but I love some of the things that are brought up again, and I love getting a glimpse into Murderbot's mental health. When we talked to Martha, she was very open about how, and I really love this too, that she was open about how her writing has kind of been a reflection of her dealing with her own mental health, and it makes this just even better to read, knowing that she's so raw about what she's writing. So I just loved this book, and I think we're kind of back to classic Murderbot in this one, where I think we're getting a lot of the themes that you and I both like, and some of the questions that we both like to kind of play around with.
Yep, I agree. Well, guys, I can't wait to talk more about this book. Please make sure that you are downloading the episodes that you are listening to, because that always helps our numbers, gets us up and gets us out there for more and more authors and events like the Martha Wells one. We loved it so much. Please make sure that you are also following us on Patreon. We like to do a bonus episode a month, and we are trying to revamp some things there. So stay tuned for those to make it a little bit more where people can just support us in the way that they are able to. So make sure you're watching out for that. Make sure you're following us on all the social platforms that are out there. If you can find us on them, add us. I'm going through the backlog of our older episodes, season 1, Wheel of Time, on our TikTok. So if you want to see random grabs from there, I believe obviously this episode comes out way later. But I've just been re-listening to old episodes and finding like little clips, like Laura's views on Nynaeve book 1, or how Matt's entire personality is shenanigans, things like that. So those are fun little things that you can keep an eye out for. And follow us on TikTok, on Instagram, on all of those things, and follow us
all of the places
as we get
go
into
to Discord.
Go to our Discord. Yes, please add us on Discord. Laura's very vocal there right now. I try my best. But
come talk to me, people.
Come talk to Laura, please. So make sure you guys are doing all those things, and join us next week as we do a deep dive into the themes and characters of Murderbot and the Murderbot Diaries. Bye.
Bye.